Foxboro Stadium had little charm and less character. It was built for $6 million and opened as Schaefer Stadium in 1971. While it may have been humble, for the vagabond Patriots, who played in 3 different stadiums in their first 10 seasons, it was the first place they could truly call home.
They built the stadium and acquired the land really on a shoestring. Compared to modern standards, it's laughable. But in sort of typical resourceful New England way, it got done.
Patriot President Bill Sullivan was instrumental in bringing about new Schaefer Stadium, currently under construction. When completed, the stadium will be easily accessible to all of New England's pro football fans.
It's like the road to China. You can't get in or out. And nobody liked going there because to get in and out of it, it's like, you know, the Khyber Pass.
I think most people, if you had a 1 o'clock game, it was done by 4:30. They were hoping to get home by the 11 o'clock news.
Route 1 was the only major access road into Foxboro, and the quiet little town 40 miles south of Boston became a big league destination each football Sunday.
When this opened in 1971, people thought this was really a state-of-the-art place, but that was pretty short-lived.
We sat on cold benches. If you forgot your cushion, you were in serious trouble by the 4th quarter. And sometimes you went to the ladies' room and they didn't work real good. So you were told to go and not flush, don't look, just walk out. And that was many a games because the plumbing is just awful here.
The Patriots knew that before they ever played a game at Foxboro.
They had had difficulty in preseason with the water pressure in the stadium. And the problem was that at the halftime, when everybody went out to go to the bathroom and things like that, and they were all going at the same time, there was no water, you know? So it's a major problem. So the state gets involved, and they said, we're going to have to run a test before we allow you to play the opening game of the regular season.
So in order to do that, we had a bunch of people all lined up. There's some of the sports writers, a bunch of the directors of the team, my sisters, my brothers, my dad.
And they got on the loudspeaker system and said, on the count of 3, we'll have super flush.
And we'd run up and down flushing the toilets. Now, can you believe this?
Some of the, the elite owners of the team and Billy Sullivan actually have their heads stuck in the toilet. And I think some of the overflush came out and hit them right in the face. But I mean, it was a constant Woody Allen moment here for 30 years.
I remember going to a game here in '95. They were honoring the 10-year anniversary of the team that made the Super Bowl. So they raised the flag up to that flagpole right there. The flag gets halfway up, and all of a sudden it catches on something, and it just kind of hangs there like this, and it's just flapping like limp. And we're all waiting for the flag to go all the way up so we can applaud, oh, this great time we made the Super Bowl. And it never made it. It only was like halfway up, and that was it. For the rest of the game, it was just flapping like this. And that was the Patriots.
Sometimes it wasn't what went up, but what came down.
Jumping Joe Gerlach. And Joe would go up in a hot air balloon, hover above the stadium, and then dive down onto what would be like wrestling mats in a gymnasium, and he hit the mats, and they say, wow, that's spectacular. So they said, you know what we ought to do? We ought to get this guy for our Monday night game.
When your football team isn't too well and you don't want the fans to kill you, you get something to divert their attention. And at halftime, Billy Sullivan sends down the very famous attorney from the O.J. Simpson trial, F. Lee Bailey, to tell me if this guy splatters, my job is over.
It was very windy. I remember the night. Very windy. So that he goes up on the hot air balloon, the guy's holding the tether. Seems like he's up there forever. Everybody says, is he going to jump? Not going to jump.
The folks that owned the concessions were livid because nobody came out, nobody went out to buy anything during halftime. They're all waiting for Joe to jump.
And Cosell's doing the play-by-play. We've got jumping Joe Gerlach up there, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't much of a game, but maybe we'll find out whether he splatters or not.
Everybody was convinced the guy's going to kill himself.
And I'm going like, I can't watch this.
And when he did jump, we thought he did kill himself.
All of a sudden, here he comes, and he comes down, and it's an explosion. this cloud of smoke is up in the air. Everybody said, what happened? And he's laying there. Everybody says he's out. He's motionless.
Most people get fired if the team is lousy, you made a lousy trade, and not getting along with the owner, which I wasn't, but not over a guy jumping out of the sky.
All of a sudden, he jumps up in the air, you know, dramatic moment. He's running around.
While they didn't have to scrape a mess off the field that night, 10 years later, it was a different story. A blinding snowstorm set the stage for the most famous ride since Paul Revere.
Toward the end of the game, we finally got the ball down in halfway close and had a timeout. And as I came off the field, I went to Ron Meyer, the head coach, and I said, can we get the snowplow out so our guys can block, get good footing for blocking? And he said, yeah, and he grabbed me and said, go down there and tell that guy. So I went running down, waving the snowplow guy out, figuring he's going to go down the line, which he'd been doing all day, and that was perfectly legal. As he got to the center of the field, he made a swerving move to clear a spot where John was going to kick, and then back across the field. Of course, the fans went crazy.
The driver was Mark Henderson, a convict on a work release program, who on this day stole the game from Miami.
Somehow or another, the Miami press found Henderson. They start on him. Do you know that Coach Shula is on the rules committee? Do you know that he's the head of the competition committee? Now Mark sits there, you know, and he goes, well, if Coach Shula's mad at me, he goes, what are they going to do, throw me in jail?
It was always a carnival atmosphere at Foxboro Stadium, and through good times and bad, Patriot fans couldn't mask their passion for the game.
One of the greatest things I ever read recently was Keyshawn Johnson coming out and saying that he hates to play in New England because of the fans up here. I think it's great when opposing players come in and say, man, I don't like to play in front of those fans.
Hey, Crockett! You're absolutely no good! You ever eat a lion? It tastes like chicken! Just like chicken!
While Patriot fans were tough on the opposition, they embraced their hometown heroes.
I can remember down in this corridor our rookie year with Jim Plunkett, our birthdays were one day apart, December 4th and 5th. There was a whole group of fans who were singing happy birthday to us, and they were literally 10 feet away. You know, I happened to catch a touchdown pass in the end zone, and as I was turning around, they were all singing happy birthday. And when you came off the field, you just turned around, and you could see the people's faces, and you could hear them, and it just seemed like they were so much a part of the game.
I think probably my favorite day was December of '85 when we were playing the Bengals. We won, we were in the playoffs. It was the first day that I think our fans understood that they could have a say in the outcome of the game. And I remember Irving Fryer standing up on the bench and, you know, orchestrating the fans to make noise, you know, when Cincinnati had the ball. And they did. We won the game.
And the fans were so jubilant. They picked up the goalposts, they carried them out. A couple of guys were going down Route 1 out in front of the stadium.
And they marched by, conveniently marched by 35 state troopers. You know, just waved at them. And
they hit the electrical wire and got electrocuted, stealing the goalpost.
Fortunately, the guy didn't die, but it was a great day. It was really a great day.
Probably some of the greatest family memories were coming to these games and seeing guys take their shirts off in the freezing cold and spilling beer on us and all the other things.
If you see the indentation there, right where the dirt comes, there's a little sand or something. Our seats were section 217, row 23, seats 1 through 6.
That's my roots. After I bought the season tickets in the 70s, 71, I remember walking right into this office where the then owner of the team, Billy Sullivan, was. And I walked into his office and saw the field and I got goosebumps. And I said, my dream one day is if I could own this team.
Robert Kraft moved from section 217 to the owner's box in 1994. And his devotion to the team and the New England fans made him the most popular owner in franchise history.
There's no other owner in sports like you, really. People's lives are really affected by the fate of this team. And for people who aren't fans, they find that hard to believe. But someone who sat in section 217 understands it well.
Someone like Randy Pierce, who was voted Patriots Fan of the Year in 2001. He lost his sight 2 years ago, yet he still comes to every home game with his guide dog, Austin.
I remember the last play I ever saw on that field was when we beat the Ravens, actually. January 2nd of '99. So my memories there are a little more treasured in some ways. I mean, it's hard to treasure the actual stadium. It's an old place that had a lot of deficiencies. Great memories, but a lot of deficiencies. A lot of people say you can't see, stay home and listen on the radio. I believe you get out and live your life. And it's a team that did that too. So the whole year just blended into just an enormous, phenomenal experience. Teddy Bruschi brought me a cup of turf from that Miami game, the final game of the year. As soon as the game's over, he runs up to the middle of the field, takes out a clump of turf, puts it into the Gatorade cup and brings it to me before he starts his celebrating. So I'd have a memory of that day forever. When Teddy brought me that cup, we set it in my house, and oddly enough, the turf began to grow. There's no light around it. So we took some of the turf out, we put it in an aquarium, and we're spreading. So my back lawn, it may take me a couple of years before this is complete, will be entirely grass from the old Foxboro Stadium.
The stadium grass may be gone, but the memories continue to grow.
It was just the worst environment imaginable for football. But what it was a very fun place to play. Once you put our fans in there, the most crazy fans in all the NFL, and you put them in that stadium, it didn't really matter. You didn't see how raggedy it was on the outside. You just saw a fun-filled atmosphere.
15 million people came through this place, and not one penny was spent by the taxpayers to make that happen. You know, I'd say it served the community very well.
I'm big on monuments and museums and everything else, and I do a lot of traveling around the world. I'd have to say, I don't think it's going to be remembered at all. This had nothing to it except survival. I compare it this way. Second World War, the sergeant says to the major, we got to get across that water. So they built a pontoon across the water. And that's what this did. It was just the pontoon that got it through for 30 years.
I guess you could probably say it's the offensive lineman of stadiums. You know, it got the job done and did it well without a lot of fanfare. It doesn't carry any charm or charisma with it. I do believe, though, the fans do have overall a warm feeling about the stadium.
I feel no sadness whatsoever. I feel, when they tore down the Garden in '95, I remember driving by, and there was this month-long stretch when you could actually see the inside of the Garden from outside. And that made me sad, because I had so many good memories of that place. And looking at Foxboro Stadium, I just don't feel that way. I'm just ready to see this one go, no question.
It's very sad, but life moves on, and the memory bank of relationships and events that have happened here, a very special part of my life, and something that I'll treasure forever.